Welcome back to the Inside Blitz. And I think with the added 850 subscribers that may not be familiar with it, we are welcoming Ted back. He is with Sports USA. He does the studio prep and the studio breaks. And I'm going to hand it off to Ted because he suggested a concept for every Friday based on his connections and what he's working on. Go ahead, Ted. Explain what we're going to be doing on Fridays.
Well, first, great to see you guys again. Good to be back in the real world here. You know, it's amazing that we actually have a football season to talk about. So none of this, in 3 months from now, in just a few days from now, this Sunday, we will start the week one. And on our Sports USA air, we have a few hundred stations on our network around the country. And, of course, on sportsusamedia.com as well. But right now, I want to tell you about our regular Friday show that we're planning. We're going to be doing sort of a preview of our doubleheader every week, the Friday before that Sunday. And this week we'll have Pittsburgh at Cincinnati and the Chargers hosting the Raiders on our air. And we'll have a chance to talk about that. I will have one or two, maybe sometimes three or four, depending on if I have a longer pregame show in the second half of our doubleheader. But I will have guests and hopefully something to talk about what they have to say to me as well. And may have a few nuggets to pass your way, which might help you when you stand in front of the window at whatever casino you're at. Right, Ron?
Or whatever computer you're at, whatever offshore address you're pressing for the moment, or onshore if you're in one of the states with legalized gambling.
Yeah, which we're not.
We're not in California.
Exactly.
Well, I'm looking forward to the Friday shows because there is a little bit of downtime on Fridays for some reason, and looking very forward to Ted's inside insight because preparing for national shows and having access to the players in the locker rooms and many other people, I think is going to be a interesting perspective that we can work off of each Friday.
Thanks, Chris. I'm looking forward to it too. And again, it's just great to be able to get the ball rolling here again. It always feels a little bit strange. Just the fact that here in Los Angeles, and there's my book. Thank you very much. Touching Greatness on Amazon.
Shameless plug.
I don't mind being shameless. That's one of my specialties. But hey, bottom line is that this really is one of the most anticipated seasons in a long time. I think the extra week, Aaron Rodgers, he's always doing his thing. I think that this is going to be a year where we're going to have some surprises, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about that during our show here today.
All right, Ron, where are we going from here? You've got some topics. I've got some banners.
Okay, we're going to go with the topics. Just want to say briefly to wrap up what we talked about. Chris and I and Ted will talk about the games after the interviews that Ted has had, spice that up, maybe talk about a couple of the players. Just a few minutes on each game, but just a little short Friday show to get you situated for the weekend. And typically, Ted, you have some good Sunday games, and I like the two that you have this week. So looking forward to discussing them on Friday. And basically, that's it for the show.
Yeah, we do tend to have pretty good priority on pick of the litter or which games we get to choose every week. So we'll have most of the good ones. Looking forward to that.
So Ted suggested some of these questions that you see scrolling right now. And so, Ted, why don't you start it off?
Yeah, I really thought it was an interesting topic. Just the fact that we've got some breakout seasons that are going to be very important for four quarterbacks particularly. Of course, Trey Lance, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and Tua in Miami. And three of those guys are in their second year, so have something to prove. Trey Lance is sort of in his true first year, and Tua's in his third year, although he didn't have a complete first year. So, you look at the combination of that. They all have something to prove big time and that they deserve to be the starters. And to me, I think that the one guy that stands out is Jalen Hurts. because I think he has the best roster overall. He now has some playmakers on his end. I love the look on Chris's face right there. He looked like he ate something bad for lunch, but that's okay.
I'm not sure he's got a better roster than Miami at this point.
Well, offensively, I think he's just as good. You throw in Tyreek Hill, yes, that's a big difference. But there's some playmakers on that Philadelphia side finally, and I do like what they're doing over there. The question is, with the whole new look offense, second year. By the way, it's the first time in his pro career, even though he's still new, that Jalen Hurts has a chance to go back to back with the same offensive coordinator, and that helps. What are your thoughts?
I think you're on the right track there. It's got to be either Hurts or Tua for me. I think Tua has the most upside because he has the exciting Tyreek Hill. He's got an offensive-minded coach there. They've completely reinvigorated the run game. The issue in Miami that's not present in Philadelphia is that Miami still is a work in progress, a colossal work in progress on the offensive line.
So is Philadelphia.
Yeah, but they have a lot of guys in place. I know they dropped a couple of the long-term veterans, but Hurts has had some time to play with more of the veterans than Tua has. They're still tweaking that offensive line. You're right, Ted. They added a lot of firepower, traded for a wide receiver, drafted a wide receiver. They have a variety of running backs, and they run more of an RPO attack for Hurts that allows him to get out of the pocket. And Hurts has already proven he's been smart. But those are the two. They run neck and neck for me.
Yeah, and I like the D and the O-line combination for Philadelphia better as well. I mean, those are two solid lines to me going into a season. Certainly, when you look at their divisions as well, I mean, we already know what Dallas's O-line has already got issues, and the rest of the division, good luck to them.
I'm not going to waste anybody's time. I lean Tua, but you guys made some great points on Hurts that we have to look out for. But I still think Tua is going to have the better year, and I'll leave it at that. I think he just has too many weapons, and I think he's going to feel comfortable. And Hurts is more of a wild card. He could have a great year also.
Yeah, he's going to need to have a great year. But what about Tua throwing the deep ball? Everybody's thinking, oh, he's just going to be able to fire it away to a wide open, all of their receivers, right? Well, it's not going to work that way. And he doesn't have a great deep ball, and certainly not from an accuracy standpoint. He doesn't.
Well, that's
Joe Montana.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how you design your offense, and if you run those slants, and all of a sudden you got Tyreek Hill running in the middle of the field, good luck.
No doubt.
I'm going to go first on this next question that you brought up, Ted. Which LA team is better? I'm going to go with the Chargers. I just think the Rams got very lucky, very fortunate last year. They were a great team, don't get me wrong, but they got a lot of breaks. And the Chargers have made improvements. I think overall they're a better team, and it's going to come down to their special needs, special teams, and the coaching.
Again.
But I just sense that Stafford's elbow is going to bother him all year. Whether he plays or not, it's going to be bothering him, and the Rams just don't have the depth.
I totally agree with you there. The Chargers are much deeper team. And, you had somebody like Khalil Mack to the D, and if he's reasonably healthy and even close to himself, what a difference maker he's going to make. And that pass rush should be outstanding, although Joey Bosa does tend to get hurt. So, these guys got to stay on the field as norm. But I still have my doubts about their head coach, Brandon Staley. He can't be losing games for them. He cost them the playoffs last year. If he cost them the playoffs this year, he should be serving Slurpees at 7-Eleven next year.
Ooh, I love Slurpees.
Me too. Yeah, so we'll see.
Ron, what do you say?
I say this in simple terms. The Rams were an 11-6 team that masqueraded really they're really a 9-8 team that showed an 11-6 type record last year, and the Chargers were opposite. They were a 9-8 team that had 11-6 written all over them until they got into their own way. there's no question in my mind the Chargers are the better team in 2 of the 3 areas. And if they hold their own in the 3rd area, they're going to have distance between them and the Rams.
And let's not forget that NFC title game, that drop pass by San Francisco. And we got a whole different storyline here, guys.
I know.
And you got, yeah.
Go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead. No, I'm just going to say it's not even then. It's all the players they added.
Oh, yeah.
Von Miller with 8 sacks in 9 games, and Eric Weddle that got them to the playoffs. And then when Cam Akers went down, they got in Sony Michel. And a guy named Beckham takes over for Woods. They pieced this team was literally a 9-8 team.
Yeah. And as you pointed out in our previous video, Ron, that they're the team that is all in. So they don't care about draft picks. And they're going to probably, if they've got some holes to fill, they're going to fill them before the season's end, which is going to help them out and help with that depth issue. And the last point I want to make is the only thing that worries me a little bit about the Chargers is never once did I have them in the top 10 last year, even though there were times when they looked like a top 5 teams. But on my metrics, they were not doing things very well across all facets of the ball. So that's a concern that I have that needs to be corrected.
Coaching there too, though, I see that above all that because they have the talent on paper, which means absolutely nothing until you do it on the field. And again, bottom line is they've got a very, very tough schedule, and it will be that way for the next few years for sure. And there's an attrition value there that, the wear down factor. We'll see if that's even an issue at all.
Yeah. Ted, your question is, what's the one most underrated, under the radar team in your opinion coming into the season? I'll throw that. I'm going to throw that at you, Ted.
Absolutely. Well, to me, it's the New Orleans Saints. And I still think that the Saints have a solid defense, top several defense in the league. Offensively, I like what they've done. I love Chris Olave joining the group. Obviously, Jameis Winston has to be healthy and has to keep it under 50 interceptions this year, and less than 10 pick sixes would help. Bottom line is new coach, new system, maybe not a totally different system because there are some of the guys that are still there. Dennis Allen is experienced. I don't think it's going to be a big drop off there. I just think if they can deal with the first several games without their running back who's suspended, I think they can get through this schedule. And Tampa Bay is beatable. They have their issues on the O-line and at wide receiver, even though they're still fairly deep. We'll see how that goes. And I just think the Saints have a chance in that division.
Their mantra has always been all in. And by virtue of adding Jarvis Landry and Tyrann Mathieu and trading up to get Chris Olave, we see no change in the way their GM goes about business. So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and
you want to go next, Chris?
By the way, Ty Matthew is another guy that one of the questions that we're not going to talk about here is who's the biggest loss for the Kansas City Chiefs? And to me, it's a toss-up between Matthew and Tyreek Hill because I think Matthew meant a ton to that defense. And he's up there in age, and he needs to play a lot at this stage of his career. But if he does, he's going to help the Saints a ton.
Good point. Ron, who's your most underrated team?
Well, I mean, we could go with teams like Tampa and stuff like that, but I think people are starting to understand that they're going down. Not Tampa, but Minnesota or something like that. But I'm going with Cleveland.
No, you took my team.
I told you to go before me.
Yeah.
Because no one's talking about their team and find me a roster weakness other than, the uncertainty at quarterback. They have the best running back duo in the NFL. They've replenished at wide receiver. Are they great at wide receiver? No, but that's not a weakness. The offensive line is not a weakness. Tight end runs 2 or 3 deep. They have Myles Garrett. They have 4 or 5 guys who could start in the secondary. They've been carefully constructed with drafts that average 8 to 10 players per year. They filled some holes in free agency and kept some of their free agency guys from leaving. I think it's tough every time you play Cleveland, and I don't think they're being talked enough about.
The only things that I would add is that they have very low expectations. They're kind of dismissed. They don't have, last year everybody expected too much, and it worked against them. This year, they're one of the forgotten teams, and I think that's a benefit for them. And I believe this team, even if Brissett plays even a little bit below average, that they're going to be okay. And if they can get average or above average from Brissett, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, probably one of the deeper rosters in the league when you talk about from a depth standpoint of guys, as Ron mentioned, guys that brought in through the draft. They're pretty solid all the way through the lineup.
They are. I don't understand how they're so easily dismissed. And I see people that live in Cleveland easily dismissing them. And it makes no sense to me at all. I feel like they're solid top to bottom.
Right. Well, of course, one of the things to look at is divisions. One of the reasons, again, that I like New Orleans as a potential upset victim in their division, because if Tampa Bay just drops a little bit, there's nothing else there to beat.
Well, I have 3 futures on the Saints to win the division, so no recruiting necessary here.
Chris, you mentioned in a lot of shows, Chris, you mentioned a lot of shows about the injury factor, and this team had bad injury luck, this and that. But the thing is, lots of teams have bad injury luck now because of the 17 games, because no one plays in preseason. Ted and I have talked about that for years, all the hamstrings and everything else that comes up. So teams like Cleveland, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and so on are more equipped to handle injuries. Baltimore, well, they just had too many. But there are some teams that are just going to go completely down the tubes if they have too many injuries, and we'll have to pivot on them. But Cleveland, because you and I sort of talked about this, they're deep enough that they can withstand that. And you're right, if they can get average quarterback play, they're going to be a bear to face every week.
What's the most overrated team?
I'm going to go last this time. I'm going last this time. You guys go.
Go ahead, Ted.
Okay. Well, until the last few weeks, it's like it is almost every year. It's the Dallas Cowboys. But just the fact that I don't even know if they're going to win their division, and it's an awful division. So when you think about that, and I think the great stat, the Dallas Cowboys have not won 10 games back-to-back seasons since 1996, guys. Both of you were in your teens then. So I mean, that's a long time ago.
Did they have a playoff win in the 2000s?
I think so.
I think one.
Right?
Yeah, I believe.
Incredible.
So again, they're America's most average team, is what they are. And when you're owned by a guy who has to be the GM and has to be the voice and has to be in control of everything, and it's all puppets below him, that's what happens, guys. What can I tell you?
There's a lot of similarities between Jerry Jones and Al Davis, how they ran their organizations into the ground when they were in their late years. And it's just disappointing to see that.
Yeah.
At one point they didn't have a kicker on the roster. I know, harping on special teams again, but these guys make minimum wage, the kickers and stuff like that, yet they decide games for teams. Cincinnati's not in the Super Bowl, maybe not even in the playoffs without their rookie kicker and what he did last year. Justin Tucker, we know about. You can't just mess around with that roster spot. And that's the things that Jerry Jones doesn't really understand.
But this is the year that Dak Prescott has to be much better than he's been, because he's got less receivers to throw to. He's got a poor offensive line. From the best offensive line in the business just a couple of years ago, they're all gone. It's a whole different ball game now.
Yeah, there was somebody I started a Discord channel that's available for anybody. But somebody commented last night that they took a flyer on him to win comeback player of the year, I think, or was it MVP? It's 60-1. I think it was comeback player of the year. He's got a shot at that. 60-1 is a long price.
Yeah, that is a big price.
I'm going to go next. I don't know why. I just feel like Buffalo is going to sputter a little bit. They've got the offensive coordinator issue, change over there. The expectations are very high. They've got the first place schedule, although it's not horrible. For whatever reason, I just think that people are taking their high performance for granted, and I could be painfully wrong and look like an idiot, and they could go 16-1. But I got a funny feeling they're going to have a tough time reaching their season wins total for some reason.
See, teams like that, they tend to have bad spread records because the public overvalues them, but they still might have win records that are one or two seed. We saw that with Kansas City a couple of years ago. And I think, Chris, you were on this pretty much. We talked about this a couple of years ago. They kept winning, but they won ugly.
Exactly.
It's just Andy Reid was that kind of coach that he still was able to pull out these wins. They made no mistakes that way, but they didn't look like anything more than a slightly above average team. They were just kind of getting by. Maybe that's what happens to them, because I still think in that division, they're going to, in the AFC, it's tough, but sure, there's some distance between them and New England right now.
I think so. I mean, I'm just saying, I just got a funny feeling that they're just not going to do as well. I mean, they may still get their wins, but I just got a funny feeling they aren't going to come easy. What's your underrated team?
Okay, well, I could have easily gone with Tampa, but I think that's going there. I'm going back to the Rams. I see nothing more than a 9-8 team, and I see divisional teams that match up against them. San Francisco, regardless of the fact, Jimmy G was at 50% at best in that playoff game, and they'd swept the season series before that. Arizona plays them tough. Seattle plays them tough. And then the uncommon opponents for LA are all going to be first place teams. So it's just not going to be easy for them. And their roster is different. The four guys that I mentioned before are not on the team right now. So they're going back to their 9-8 roster. And we don't know about Stafford. Chris is, long married to what Stafford is or isn't in terms of his arm strength and stuff like that.
He's paranoid too about Stafford.
But there's complacency too. I mean, maybe there's a driver, whatever, but you just won the Super Bowl. You've had less off season and so on. Everybody's going to gun for you, starting with Buffalo in week 1. I think this is a good team. I just don't think it's a great team. And I don't think people should get their expectations up that they're necessarily even going to win the division. And if they do, maybe they win it at 10-7 because they all play the AFC West, and we know what the AFC West is about. So
I'd like to make two comments. I want to get back to the kicking game, and I cannot begin to tell you how good a Baltimore fan must feel, and how good I used to feel as a Detroit Lion fan when we had Jason Hansen.
Oh yeah,
I cannot for the life of me fathom why kicking is not a priority for teams, because if you find the right kicker, he's there for 15, 17 years. I mean, and it's such a security blanket.
Of course, it's hard to find the right kicker too. I mean, there are all those guys who last 15 to 17 years. Those are a small handful.
You got to feel bad for Buffalo. They lost their punter. I mean, and he was a gold mine. Ted, who do you think's the best NFC team? Who's the best AFC team?
Well, to me, it's sort of a toss-up in the NFC because I'm not sure I trust any of them in the NFC. The Packers are still the favorites to win in their division, but I don't know what they're going to do offensively. Aaron Rodgers has to make a bunch of number 3 receivers look great, and he's good at that, but good luck. That's not going to be easy. He does have an outstanding running game. But Minnesota should be improved as well. And anytime you go from a defensive head coach to an offensive head coach, that should help the Vikings overall. The rest of the division, sorry, Lions, I see them improved, but there's still not going to be something to deal with from a top of the division standpoint. So I'm leaning towards Green Bay, and I'm leaning towards Tampa Bay, but I don't like their O-line. So I don't like anything about the NFC. And right now, the AFC should be -5.5 or 6 in the Super Bowl, and we haven't even played a game yet.
Well, I'm on record. I think San Francisco is the best in the NFC. I think
maybe
it's
the roster, but their quarterbacks?
Well, you know what? I look at it this way. Either Trey Lance is playing well and they're keeping him in, or if he's not, Garoppolo's going to go in. So
that's a few more losses by the time he comes in.
Maybe.
Or if he's hurt.
Or
if he's hurt. Yeah.
So we're out of official topics. Anything you guys want to add before we cut this short?
What about on the AFC, guys? Who's your favorite team in the AFC? Because it is unbelievably loaded, and most people are just going to say, "Hey, Buffalo's the favorite for a reason, and they deserve it." But Chris is a little nauseated just thinking about that. He's just remembering the 4 straight trips to the Super Bowl that meant absolutely nothing.
Scott Norwood.
Oh, poor Marv Levy. He did such a great job getting them there, but it didn't really matter in the long run. Hey, look, another team that could be extremely, we talked about them, that most people are not thinking like there should be AFC favorites, but the Chargers have the guys to do it. Now let's see, can they do it?
I don't think we can be surprised by 5 different teams in the AFC going to the Super Bowl. It's going to be down to injuries, a big play here or there, a bad penalty. It's going to be one of those things. You've got Baltimore, you've got the Chargers, you've got Buffalo. There's a couple other teams that can certainly get in there. Ron?
Well, just flash back to last year's playoffs. Every game was decided in the last 13 seconds. You had overtime games. You had the meltdown that Buffalo clearly remembers, leading with 13 seconds to go and not taking advantage of the rules to make sure that 2 passes weren't complete. And that game should never have gone to overtime. You had the San Francisco LA, you had Tampa going overtime. You had Cincinnati beating Kansas City in overtime. Every single game was a toss-up. So if we're in for that kind of year again, it's going to be fun because we all know the NFL and the NCAA football, week 1, for example, is the ultimate reality show. It's unscripted.
Yeah, who the heck knows? And I'm really, really curious to see how Cincinnati's going to bounce back. Most teams that are the losers in the Super Bowl tend to have some issues the following year. But this is a very young team. They have an improved offensive line. They've got enough playmakers. They've got a little bit of everything. I like their defense overall. So I think they're going to be solid, but we'll talk more about them on Friday.
Well, let's hope that Burrow does not follow the same career path as Marino did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at very similar situations. And I agree with you. I think Cincinnati is not going to be the typical Super Bowl loser fade out team. Ron and I discussed it that they quite possibly could be a better team than last year and still finish 4th in that division.
Well, that's certainly possible. No doubt. Obviously, the cards fell their way to get to where I'm not just saying it was straight luck. You got to do some good things to get there, but everything fell their way and they took advantage of it. That's great. So now they need to step it up and say they deserve to be in that discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 12 months ago, we said that Cincinnati might be their first coach fired.
Yeah.
And now he's got a contract extension.
Good point.
So we also saw Philadelphia and Kansas City rebound from slow starts. Those were the key word there. The P word for me was pivot. When do we pivot and find the next Cincinnati? And that's what we're going to have to work on.
Well, but I think we also acknowledged that the only reason we were kind of down on Cincinnati is they had no depth. But if they stayed healthy, they could be in the mix. So, and they stayed healthy. And are they going to be able to stay healthy this year for a second year in a row? Probably not.
Yeah, it's tough, no doubt about it. But they do have a pretty solid roster. And I think there's something about the confidence factor of such a young team getting to the Super Bowl, giving themselves a chance to win it all. I mean, even though they lost, I think they're in a better spot emotionally as a team than most others would be.
When you have a quarterback like Burrow, I mean, that guy is all a class act and a leader. And when you've got a player of his talent, anything can happen from year to year.
He's got the win gene too. Wherever he's at, not all these guys. You could be really good, but do you win when you're? That's one of the things I like about Jalen Hurts. I don't know if he's good enough to be a really good quarterback in this league, but he's got the win gene. He finds ways to win. So let's see if he does it at this level.
Well, we're going to have to keep an eye on. we got to keep an eye on Trevor Lawrence. I mean, if he has a second year in a row of dungeon play, well, that's going to put a lot of pressure on him, and that's he's got to show some improvement this year.
Although there is a little less pressure on them because there's no expectations.
True. There's expectations that they improve.
Yeah, that's right. But if they win 6 games, he's looking like a Hall of Famer. So, right? So he's got a little bit of time, but no doubt he has to get better. And there are no excuses. All the old excuses are gone. All right, Urban Meyer's in the history books. Let's do something now, guys.
Final thoughts, Ron?
No, there's been a lot of preparation on my part to get the season going. I'm happy with that. I'm really excited that we have a chance and opportunity this year, as opposed to other years, to network, to share our thoughts. That really has helped me hone in on the process and everything else. And I mentioned pivot very quickly. We have to have that ability to pivot. I'm going to be looking at where I can find the right pivots. I think I did a great job with Philadelphia and Kansas City last year and taking advantage in the middle of the season. I was too slow on pivoting away from Carolina last year.
So was I.
Again, so, we're looking at these kinds of things, and basically we're a few days away from starting. I think we've done all the stuff that we need to do, and let's do it. Let's kick it off.
Yeah, we did our homework.
We sure did this year.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, I just can't wait for this season because there's just so many factors that's going to just not only in each conference, but the divisions are fascinating to me. And by the way, every year there's always one team, almost every single season in the last 2 decades, that's gone from last to first. And that's going to be interesting to see which team that might be this year.
Baltimore.
There's no doubt that they got an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave you with that note. If you care to subscribe, please do. Ron and I are in a Discord channel. You can find that link in my tweets. We had almost 200 people yesterday, so
that's great.
It's going to be an environment where we're not just sitting there giving out free picks or anything like that. We want to create a community where people can ask questions and learn without being ridiculed along the way, and the spread of information is just invaluable, and meeting new people. So we'll leave you on that note. We're going to be back with the Inside Blitz this Friday. Ted's going to be leading the way there. We're looking forward to what he learns this week, and we hope to see you then. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it.
See you Friday.